So zBrush was one of the most confusing programs at first for me when I first started using it. I had no idea how it worked. I couldn't do anything except for create shapes over and over and over again, and if I was lucky I was able to create a build-up. I was able to sculpt a little bit, but I didn't know what I was doing at all. But now that I've learned a little bit, only a week's worth, I wanted to just share the basics for you guys, just to show you kind of how I learned how to get started. So when you first start zBrush, you have this blank setup, you have no idea what's going on, you don't know what to do, and so you just start pressing buttons, and you get, I'm using a tablet, so excuse any mild or weird movements. You just get these weird shapes, and you say, what the heck is going on? Well, what you're doing is you're creating a single shape that you're drawing on. However, we're using dots here, so we're getting multiple. What you're doing is you're creating a shape that you can sculpt on. So let me give you an idea of what I was taught to do to start learning. What I suggest you do to start learning as well. Bring up your LightBox. This is essentially just a collection of files and projects and whatever that's in your zBrush folder on your hard drive. And don't touch anything, but simply go over to your tools and press LightBox Tools. Now we get all these different tools. There's a muscular face, there's all these different animals, there's a leaf, there's all sorts of little things. So the one I found was easiest to start off. Unless you just want to start playing with a sphere, then use a sphere, sure, that's great. But the demo head, so double click on it. It's a ZTL, that's a zBrush tool. You'll notice double clicking on it does nothing, except we're just getting duplicates of it in here. So this is just a duplicate of this tool over and over. I'm going to take my original one though, we'll hide this menu, and now all you do is you click and drag this tool. So this tool is actually just creating a mesh. So somewhere around there. Now let's just move it into position. So we're in draw mode, which means we're drawing shapes. So I could draw heads over and over and over again. And this is the error that I got at first that made no sense to me. So you see I can't do anything with this now. I'm stuck. I try to draw, I can't do anything with it. So what I have to do is I have to go into my layers. I got no layers. But I do have the head, I do have the eyes, I just can't do anything with them. So let's start over. Under geometry, let's have that open, let's have layers open, actually, and let's draw our head again. So we have our head selected. Whoops, not star, a head. Let's draw it. Now, before we press edit or anything else, let's get it aligned how we want. So let's use the move tool first to get it centered. So the move tool in zBrush 4R6 is very easy. Just click and drag, and it drags it along the axis that you want. So you can get it centered however you want. And if you want it to take up the whole canvas, do your scaling here, because it says over here scale, but that's actually scaling your canvas, and it's actually not scaling your mesh at all, because zBrush works in a 2.5D world, and you're actually just making the pixels bigger when you use scale over here. So we want to scale our mesh here first. So using scale, it works roughly the same way when we start off in this basic mode. We're just going to scale them a little bit in that axis and a little bit in that axis, just to get his proportions back about right, but to take up more of the canvas. And now we can rotate it if we want or whatever. But now we can get back. Now we can start using our tools over here. So let's first get into edit mode. Now that you're in edit mode, you are stuck with this mesh. Unless you want to start over or you save your work, you're essentially stuck. You can't go back and you can go back and redraw it, but this is the mesh we're working on now. So like I said, you can move them around on your canvas. You can scale, but again, see, it's just making the pixels bigger. You're not actually scaling it. Now it's misaligned with the eyes, or they're hidden. Yeah, they're just misaligned. I have no idea where they ended up. Anyways, you can also rotate from here. Now, before you get going, if you have a tablet, I suggest that what you do is you open up the settings for it, and you set up a preset for zBrush, and make sure you have Shift for one of your pen buttons and Alt for one of your pen buttons, because those are going to be two of the most common modifiers you'll be using in addition to your standard click, of course. And if you don't have a tablet, of course, just use your Shift, Alt, and mouse. But I just wanted to make that mention there if you're using a tablet. So anyways, back in zBrush, you rotate by clicking off of the model. You'll see if I'm on the model, the brush moves on the mesh in whichever direction my cursor is on the mesh. But if I move off the mesh, you'll see it stays completely flat, and it turns from that crosshairs to that rotating icon. That means I can rotate my mesh on my canvas. So I'm actually rotating the mesh. I'm not rotating the camera at all. There is no camera to move in zBrush. You're actually rotating the mesh. But now, why I like setting up those buttons for my tablet, or if you're just using your keyboard, mouse, or whatever, is because when you hold down Shift, you get the blue cursor instead of the red. And the blue, it brings up your smooth brush. You can see over here I now got a smooth brush when I press blue, so that's very useful. But it also allows you to snap to the nearest orthographic view. So if I drag to the left or whatever, you can get different orthographic views. I'll turn them around. I will do that, and it snaps right to the nearest orthographic view. If we get somewhere to the top or close to it and try it again, orthographic to the top. And you can also zoom by clicking, holding down Alt, then letting go of Alt. Okay, that didn't work. Hold down Alt, click, then let go of Alt, and now, as long as you still have the mouse button, or in my case, my tablet, still pressed down, you're able to zoom. But until you get intuitive with those, I find that using these right here are the easiest, because you can just move, you can scale, so zoom in and out, and you can rotate. Now the rotate I don't use there. I do like actually using it off the canvas. And so where I like to start is I like to rotate it somewhere up front, and then use my Shift mode to get them in an orthographic front view, and then frame, and that will make them my entire canvas size. He's framed all the way within my canvas. So let's get started doing some actual sculpting. So I'm gonna actually scale in, or zoom in if you want to call it that, and look at the anatomy of the face. I'm not going to go too far into the anatomy of the face, but using this base stock head gives you a good idea of how the human head looks and works. So you can see different features in here. They're a little bit muted, but they're all there. You can see we have the cheekbone here. We have the eye sockets, obviously, and the eyelids. We have the brow and the brow bone. We have this little triangle part right here. I don't know what it's called. We have the temples, the forehead, the entire skull, obviously. We have the bridge of the nose and the entire nose. There's this little part right here that a lot of people miss. I don't know what it's called. The nostrils, obviously. We have the upper lip, which is basically just like it's like a mustache split with a split down the middle, and then this little part right here that droops down, kind of. As in the lower lip is essentially just two separate parts. It's this little you could almost call it like a wedge, like an orange wedge, and then it's just smooth down below in this other organic shape. And then at the bottom on the chin, you have this again, kind of a not a triangular, but almost a circular or a hexagonal shape for the chin, depending on how chiseled the face is. And then the rest of the head is pretty basic, and we're not going to deal with the Adam's apple or the neck or anything. That's just the basic head. So what I do with the stock base mesh, the out of the demo head, when I want to start learning, is I take my smooth button, so I hold down shift to get the blue, just like that, and I just start smoothing everything out. I don't want to get rid of all the detail, but I want to get rid of quite a lot of it. That'll allow me basically a blank slate, and then I can go and relearn all those features on my own, because they're still there, but they're going to be very, very muted. So I don't want to use too much pressure, or if you're on using a mouse, turn your Z intensity down. You'll notice when I go to smooth mode, my Z intensity jumps up to 100 instantly. I would actually want to turn that down, because I find it quite strong by stock. Somewhere around 50 usually I find is best. Just over 50 maybe. And then yeah, I just start smoothing out everything that comes with the demo head. I like to keep the details in the ears, but the cheekbones and all those features I just went over can be smoothed pretty much completely. Even around the eyes, if you're careful and use a light touch, you can get rid of a lot of the detail. And that gives you just a basic mannequin to essentially work with, which I find, like I said, is much easier, and it allows you to view the anatomy. You can still tell the cheekbone's still there. I would smooth it out even further though, especially if I had a reference of human face anatomy. But the basic anatomy is still here. You still can tell where the brow bone is. You still know the temples right here, this flattened spot, etc. So from there, then I would just zoom in and go to somewhere I want to work. Maybe I want to start building up his eyebrows. Now I have symmetry on, so you can see I have two cursors. Pressing X turns that on and off. As you can see, the double cursor pops on and off. But working with a symmetrical human face, you want it on 99% of the time. And then you can use the standard clay tool. Everyone has their favorite tools, and it does work well, and it looks like it auto smooths, but I find it doesn't do the most realistic or easiest work on a human head mesh. My favorite tool for this is if you click on your brush here, you get all your brush tools, and there's tons of them. This is why I prefer zBrush to Blender. My favorite is, and I have a lot of IMMs, which are insert multi-mesh brushes basically, but I'm not going to get into those right now. But my favorite mesh for building up on a human face is, where the heck is it, over here, clay tubes. So what they are is they're basically the same thing, but they're very flat. You can see it's almost like building up a cube on there. Now that's a huge brush size, so I'm going to undo that and get my brush size down way smaller. I generally use around a 30. Again, with between a 30 and 50 intensity. And then yeah, basically what I do is I just build up an area. So say I want to build up his eyebrows. I'll just build up some clay tubes. And then after I get something a little bit like that, I go back to smooth mode. And I very slowly, where it's needed, smooth it out. And you can see I get a much more natural, realistic effect this way, and I also can control it a lot more, especially with a tablet with pen pressure. And I just smooth out where it's needed and where it looks like it needs to be smoothed out. And then I'll go in and I'll build some more. And repeat the process. I'll just smooth it out again. And over time, this will build up shape. And the smooth tool allows me to essentially remove. But if I do want to remove, I have the Alt button mapped to my tablet pen. You can see you get the minus button when you press Alt, or again on your keyboard obviously, and that allows you to do the inverse. So instead of Z add, we're doing Z sub when you press Alt. So obviously that takes away clay. Let's say I decided that I've added too much down here in the bottom. I would take some away. Little light touch here, and then I would smooth it back out. And you can get some very natural, realistic shapes that way. And every time you click, it makes the process happen over and over again. So if I click and drag, I'm only going to get that much clay built up in that area. But if I click again, I'm going to accumulate another layer. Now there is a way to change this so that you can accumulate constantly, just like in Blender, but I generally like to work at one layer at a time. So yeah, I would just continue that process until I get the shape I want. Maybe I want to make them look mad. Even this is a pretty strong smooth intensity, but I'm going for a little bit more speed here than accuracy. So I'm not the best at making a person look mad, obviously. And then yeah, you can even get in closer. Now your brush stays the same, so you will have to change your draw size as you move in and out, because like I said, you're not actually scaling the mesh. You're just making the pixels bigger. You're just zooming in essentially. So it works just like in Photoshop essentially. So yeah, maybe I'd build on the eyelids. Maybe I'd want to give them some heavy wrinklage. I'm not going to do too much of this sculpting because I want to get into the move tool, which I find is the most powerful tool in ZBrush. So we'll just give them some decent little eyelid folds here. You can see we're getting some artifacting, so that would be something I'd want to fix. And that's actually where the smooth tool comes in and very powerful, as it allows you to fix artifacts. Anyways, let's frame it again. Let's get them back to standard. So yeah, we added some little eyebrows there. Nothing too realistic, but we've got a pretty basic face, and we added some crazy little eyelid droops there. Whoops, it saved it. So now you may have said, where did my object go? Well, all it did was it turned it off. So you can turn it on again with the I button, and it's back. Or you can just press Control Z, and that's in the sub tool. The sub tool basically says how many objects you have in your scene. So if I went and added another object, say if I went and added a bow tie to them, that would be another sub tool in there. And so yeah, what I wanted to talk about was the move tool. So let's change to the move tool. This will bring up a few more things in Blender. Move. You can also just press the letters either on your keyboard or by clicking them, and that helps you narrow it down. Move. So there's a few different moves, obviously. Move elastic can be very useful, but the standard move tool is what I use 99% of the time so far. So I would maybe get a profile view, and then I'd use my shift to get an orthographic view. And then I might move them over just to get a good view and frame them. Now we can completely change the way he looks. Now the brush size, as you can see, it stayed the same size we had when we were doing detail sculpting. We want to use a huge brush size, maybe 80 to 100. Yeah, maybe I'll go around 80, 90, 100. And this is where you can go into geometry. And you have division levels. So this is division level 3, my highest amount of division. You can still see the polygons, and you can divide it. You can divide it to get a higher amount of resolution. But I have 3 different levels. So you can see level 2 and level 1 is the base level. Now when I'm using the move tool, this is when I want to be in my lowest division level, so we could completely change the character. I noticed that the stock demo head has a very curved forehead, whereas I like to have my characters a very square forehead. So I would maybe just click and drag and make his forehead a lot more square, something like that, and maybe bring down the top of his head just a little bit. And as always, you can always smooth this out. Smoothing is going to have a huge effect when you're in a low mesh resolution like this. You can see it's essentially just decimating the mesh. If you need to do mega smoothing or sculpting at a lower division level, is going to be the way to do that. And maybe we wanted to give him a funny nose. Now you can see how, again, how my cursor rotates around the mesh, so that's how I know where I'm pulling from. So pull maybe from the very tip of his nose, very light touch. Maybe I'd pull it out to there, kind of give him a weird looking nose, and maybe make it look very hooked. Maybe bring this back up a little bit, and then maybe move that the lip back to where it should be. Don't want to give him totally weird looking lips. Drag this part of the lips back out. We could give him a funny looking chin. Again, fix the lips up a little bit. Almost an ape-like look. And yeah, you can totally play with it if you want him to have, if it was an old person maybe or something, you want him to have really saggy cheeks. Let me undo that, I screwed that up. You would maybe pull this part of the cheeks down, right below the cheekbone. And there you have it. And we could very quickly go back to our clay tubes, turn our brush size down. You'll see my division level went up automatically because it knows that I'm using that. When I last used clay tubes, I was on division level 3. However, we want to undo that. So with the move tool at the lowest division level, this is where you can get some serious stuff done. So maybe a size about 100, I'd maybe drag his nose out, give him a funny looking nose with a crazy bridge. Maybe drag his lips up and then drag his chin out to give him a funny looking chin. Drag that part of the nose back up, fix the lips. Maybe I want his cheeks to be droopy like an elderly person. Drag them down. You can really change the look of your character here without having to have a base mesh recreated in Maya. So you can see we've taken the original demo head and we've created a completely different character. You could pull the brows really far out. I want to go back in orthographic mode by pressing shift. And maybe I want to square off the forehead here. Go right to the edge and pull the forehead and square it out. And then we can just bring our division levels back up to 3 so we don't lose any of our changes. Go back to my clay strips, or clay tubes, sorry. Bring my draw size down. Could maybe add on some hair streaks. Very basic, obviously. Smooth that out. Maybe grab the snake hook tool, if I can find it. We could even drag some hair out. Probably would want a higher division level for things like that, but this doesn't look humanly at all, but it gives you an idea of how things work. So I'll go back to my orthographic front view. Come on. Frame it. And there you go. We've created a completely different looking character in no time at all, based off the demo head. So instead of starting with a base mesh of your general shape, I suggest just starting with the demo head and working from there. Like I said, as you can see, you completely can change the look of your character very quickly and easily. Well, without doing the work of trying to create this base mesh first of all. Sounds like I have a cold. Jeez, I can hardly talk. Maybe I do have a cold. It's winter. So yeah. As you can see, like I said, we've created a whole different creature or character very easily, just like that. Yeah, it's as simple as that. ZBrush is really powerful that way. Again, we would probably want higher division levels when you're working with the snake hook. Maybe I'd divide it once or twice. You can see we're already at 1 million polygons and everything's smoothed out. But ZBrush will handle 1 billion polygons, no problem, even on a mid-range computer. And you can see how much smoother everything gets. So maybe pull out some sort of crazy looking wing things. Then maybe we'd go back into sculpting. And also, if you have a Wacom tablet, you can also use the eraser to do the inverse. But I find flipping the pencil or the pen, I guess, takes longer than just using an extra button to smooth stuff out. Whoa. And that's what happens sometimes that confuses me, is you lose all your work and then you have to go find it again in the LightBox tools. And if it didn't save it, then that means that you have to I don't know where all my work is because I didn't save it. But anyway, you can save as a ZBrush tool and then you can redraw it at any time and then start working on it again. So I suggest you save often because sometimes ZBrush seems to do weird things like that and you lose all your work. Or you can also just go to File and save as an actual ZBrush project, and that will save all your coloring. So if I was to give it a different material, if I was to color on it or something, or use anything, if it's basically a ZBrush project, saves everything, whereas a ZBrush tool saves the mesh that you're working on. So yeah, that's just the basics of ZBrush that I've kind of learned in the last little bit. Just wanted to point some beginners like myself in the right direction, sort of. I didn't go into the UI or anything, but yeah, just to kind of... This program confused me at first for the first month that I owned it, and so I decided I finally wanted to learn the basics, and that's kind of how I'm starting to learn it, with just the demo head and messing around, and losing a lot of my progress in the process. So anyways, that's all I have for you guys for now. Just a little different thing from Blender for once. So anyways, that's it. We will see you guys next time.